Again, I want to welcome everyone and thank you for joining us for session 2 of the ACI mentoring program. I am Erica Schwegman, the Associate Director of Membership and Operations with Allied Construction Industries. Before we get started, I want to remind everyone to please remain muted throughout the program, but we do encourage you to keep your cameras on. Feel free to use the chat feature at the bottom throughout the program. And you can talk to our panelists, ask questions, meet other participants. And if you haven't done so already, in the upper right-hand corner, make sure to hit speaker view for your best viewing experience. And now that housekeeping is complete, we wanted a quick reminder of why we are here today. So for a few years now, our ACI Young Professionals have hosted several breakfasts with the board and industry mentors, along with lessons learned. There has always been a culture of the need for growth, development, and interpersonal relationships. And our young professionals recognized this and decided to take action and create the ACI mentoring program for all ACI members, not just our young professionals. So today marks session 2 of this new program, and we couldn't be more excited to hear from our panelists of mentor and mentee duos about the relationship, expectations, best practices, and much more. In the very near future, we will be providing all participants information on the official ACI mentoring program, where we will invite you to sign up to mentor or be matched with a mentor. We also have a couple of speed networking events that we're going to be planning throughout the year to help foster these extremely important relationships. And now it is my pleasure to introduce you to your moderator for the day. Caroline Courtney is a Surety Underwriter Associate with Chubb Surety. In her tenure at Chubb, she has also become an active volunteer with ACI, especially pertaining to this mentoring program. From committee participation to event planning and execution, Caroline has become a go-to leader and advocate for all that ACI and ACI YP has to offer. Welcome, Caroline.
Thank you, Erica. It's good to be here. I am moderating my first event, so bear with me. I know we have really great people with really fascinating stories, so I really want to focus on them. And we're just going to launch it off by talking to Matt Kozman and Lizzie Miller about their relationship, how they got started, a little bit of that process. Y'all want to take it away?
Sure. My name is Matt Kozma. I've been at Schaefer for 6 years. Before that time, I went to UC for my undergrad and graduate degree, and I became a mentor at Schaefer in 2017, I believe, in which I started with mentoring co-ops, and then I then mentored Lizzie Miller. Schaefer is a little different in which when you're hired at the company, you will be assigned a mentor as opposed to choosing one. And that is just for the first year at Schaefer, for you to get acquainted with the company, the culture, the business processes, and so on. With that, I'll leave you speak.
Yeah, so my name is Lizzie Miller. I started in Schaefer in 2019, so I've been here a little under 2 years. I started right after graduating grad school. And like Matt said, when I joined Schaefer, you're automatically signed with a mentor that's on your team, and our teams are usually just centered around what kind of buildings you do. So Matt was my mentor formally for about a year, and I've been, I guess, mentorless formally for a few months here. But this upcoming summer, I will actually be a mentor for a co-op. So it's a little bit of a cyclic process.
That's great. And it's wonderful how you're continuing to develop and take on the next role of the next stage. I'm going to throw it over to Daniel Tobley and Niani Napier about the same question, how y'all met, how that mentorship developed.
I'll start off with, yes, Niani approached me wanting to gain more knowledge of project management here at Valley Interiors, and asked me to be her mentor, and I said, I'll sure do my best. So that's where it started, and it's still ongoing now.
Yanni, how'd you decide to continue to develop that way? Was that your first mentor? Was that second? How did that process
No,
go?
yeah. So I had a few mentors before that, but it was kind of like a transition period as far as like, different roles that others have to do within a company. So not that I was less important, but there was more so of like a transition. So there was like the best fit, and I just felt like, you know, I wanted to figure out the best way that I could be helpful to someone else, and they can be helpful to me. So that's how that kind of went about. So.
And you spoke about transition. How did you transition into Valley Interior Systems?
So I went to Woodward Career Tech High School, and then right after that I went to college. I went to Cincinnati State, where I co-op. So that's how I was. I was initially introduced to Valley Interiors from high school, and then that led into me going to college, and then it pursued to me being a co-op with Valley. So.
Wonderful. It's a really long road to success, and you just continue to chase it. So I think Daryl said last time, if when we first met, if you want it badly enough, you'll go after it. So we want it.
Yeah.
On that wonderful note, pass it over to John Higgins and Michael Raiden. I know y'all have a little bit different setup with your relationship. You want to talk about how that launched?
Yeah, sure. I'll lead us off here. I originally met John through ACI. So we don't work in the same company like the other two pairings. I'm with the Asset Advisory Group as a financial advisor. John's an attorney at Frost Brown Todd, but we met at a ACI networking event, and we helped plan an ACI networking event within the YPs where Frost Brown Todd was hosting the young professional group for a March Madness party that I was kind of the YP liaison for. So got to know John through that and through helping with the breakfast with the board events that Erica mentioned earlier. And he was just somebody that I kind of hit it off with and liked spending time with and would talk to at ACI events. And then further down the road, after knowing John for a few years, I was in a period of transition career-wise and was just looking to talk to different people that may be able to help me out with that. And John was somebody that came to mind. He had, helped me in the past by trying to include me and introduce me to people at ACI events. So I just got the feeling that he would be willing and able to sit down with me. So I don't think we called it a mentor-mentee relationship until kind of being included in this event. And I thought to ask John, hey, would you be a part of this and tell our story a little bit. So it was a very organic way of developing that relationship, but John's certainly somebody that I look up to and has been a huge help to me within ACI and outside of ACI over the last several years.
Thank you, Michael. You were way too kind. I'm John Higgins. Good morning. Couple things. First of all, Yanni is way too humble. She is really a shining star. And we're very proud of her. She is a great example of the construction industry in Cincinnati's outreach at Woodward and other places, trying to get people involved in the construction industry at a younger age. And there are various programs that the construction industry in Cincinnati has been involved in, including the ACE mentoring program back at Woodward almost 20 years ago. And the Spirit Construction and ACI have endowments and programs, and Yanni is one of the stars of that program, and she's way too humble to brag on herself, so I will.
Thank you.
Secondly, thank you all for showing up today. A huge part of life is just showing up, and Michael and I are prime examples of that. I started showing up at ACI back in 2003, and I just showed up at everything. I showed up for speeches, the picnic, the Reds game, whatever it was, I just showed up. And then I quickly got involved in one of the committees. And I realized if you just show up for every meeting, you will get more and more involved because shockingly, I don't know, 75% of people do not show up. So thank you for showing up, get engaged. You probably think, as I did 20 years ago, what can I add to this conversation? Maybe I'm brand new or I just graduated college or I don't have any experience. I felt the same way. And my message to you is, if you just show up, you will add to the conversation, and we will find something for you to do, by the way, at ACI. And eventually you'll meet people like how Michael and I met years ago when he started showing up, and you get more involved. And I love to tell this story. So when I first started showing up at ACI, there might be 200 people at a function, and I would know 2 of them. And over the years, I met many of the same people for the first time 10 times, which is somewhat embarrassing. But, I meet someone, Dan Dugan, I'll pick on Dan, who's retired now. And he'd go, "Hey, nice to meet you." And of course, I would think, well, Dan, I've introduced myself to you 9 times now. But eventually, they remember who you are. So now when I show up at an ACI function, if there are 200 people there, I probably know 180 of them, and the ones I don't know are the young folks like yourselves. So thank you for showing up. Continue to show up. Michael's point, mentoring it doesn't have to be formal. It can be very organic. You don't have to say formally, "Will you be my mentor?" or anything like that. It's just someone really who becomes a trusted advisor to you, and you respect their opinion. And I have many mentors in my life, and I think the flip side of that is you pay it forward, and you have many mentees, and you all will find out in the not too distant future that you'll probably be a mentee to a summer associate or summer clerk as well. So what's our next question?
Well, that's actually perfect. You said everyone can be a mentor, everyone can be a mentee, and it's about what you take from every opportunity. And I think that really segues well into kind of asking Lizzie and Matt, of course, but what do you think brings out the best match in a mentor-mentee relationship? And then Lizzie, how is your experience with Matt going to carry forward into your mentoring relationship as you come on board with that?
Sure. We were talking about this a little before the session started. Is it best to have similar people together? Is it best to have different people together? And what makes the best mentor pair? But I think at the end of the day, it's just that you have to have a mutual respect for one another, and you both have to be coming at it from the same playing field. The point of having a mentor or a mentee is you both want to learn in the process. It's a willingness to learn and to want to grow professionally, possibly even personally. So I think as long as you are both coming at it from the right angle, then you're going to get something obviously beneficial out of it. I don't know, there might be personality traits that obviously lend itself to a better relationship than others, but I think at the end of the day, just having a respect for the job that one another is doing as a mentee or a mentor is the most important thing to having a successful relationship. Do you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, after mentoring 4 different people, I think that really finding common ground is key, as well as communication. Not everybody works the same. Not everybody has the same views about things, and I think that finding that middle ground and building it from there is key.
Yeah, I think there's been several times where Matt and I have been working on something together, and I'm thinking like, why are you doing it that way? But at the end of the day, I really appreciate that because I learned something from it. I think to answer your second question, going into this summer where I'll be a mentor for a college co-op, I think just taking, the same concept of when I was a mentee, I learned so much from Matt, and when I'm a mentor, I want to also learn the same amount from my mentee. Just learn about the process and learn, how can I best help this student, and just try to think back to when I was a mentee and what helped and what didn't help.
I love that. I would definitely agree with the fact that the closer you are to that development, maybe it makes it a little easier to make that connection. But as you gain experience, it's just the more you mentor, then you stay relevant, you stay up to date with all of that learning process. Because I think it's very easy to become complacent. But with everything that's happened in the past year, we can't be complacent. We have to develop, we have to evolve. And I think this makes this a great time to launch our program because the world is developing and evolving. And you talked about saying, Matt, why are you doing it that way? Daryl, I think you actually mentioned something along those lines when we first met about the process for Niani and wanting her to or actually you had mentioned it to your previous mentor and on your journey to success and development. Do you want to talk about that?
Yes, as we all, I've had several mentors over the years and very appreciative to all of them. Biggest part of it is sharing that information, but in the very early days, I had a very strict mentor. You never had to wonder where he was coming from, and he said, if you do things exactly like I do them, you'll be as good as me someday. And I hesitantly told him, no, I think I'll watch everyone and take the best from all and be better than you someday. And he looked at me kind of funny and said, you know what, you're probably right.
I love that. I think that's fantastic. And that's kind of the idea of what we're doing here. We want everyone to come together and take the kind of matching quiz and see what your strengths and weaknesses are, because you can always improve both. And along with those lines, what would you suggest as Daryl, this is to you again, and we'll pass it around as well, but that was what you had an expectation as a mentee. How have those expectations as a mentee developed and changed as your expectations as a mentor?
So from that perspective, I don't think they've changed at all, because I encourage Niani to get feedback from all project managers. Keep your eyes and ears open, and you'll learn something new every day, is what another one of my mentors told me years ago. So I don't want her to follow my pattern exactly, but I think she knows to appreciate the things that she sees that works and that I do, but also the things that other people do that work better. And she even has her own ideas that work better than mine, and she shows me that and teaches me how to be better.
I think that's wonderful. Niani, what about you? What are your expectations as a mentee? And when you approach Daryl with, strong intentions, what kind of was your idea with that?
Really, my idea was just like same thing that he would expect from me: open honesty and the constructive criticism, because I know that will help me, later down on the road, whether I had the same mentor or it keeps expanding. So mainly just that, and just like, not giving up, not giving up on me, and just keeping forward like that. So
it's wonderful. And John, I know you work with mentees outside of your field. I know that's part of what you do. How about you as a mentor to lots of varieties of people? What are your expectations?
My biggest expectation with a mentee is that the person is honest and candid and not defensive and receptive to both positive and negative criticism. There's an old saying, you think I'm great, I think I'm great too. And everybody loves to hear that. And I do believe in giving positive feedback to people. Much like Daryl, I was kind of raised in this generation with when the only thing you heard, no news was good news. And if you heard anything, it was something you screwed up. But part of the mentoring relationship is being candid as the mentor and giving advice that, hey, you should really stop doing that, or, you shouldn't behave that way, or here's how you should have handled that. And it can be a learning opportunity. But to give the person good advice, they have to be honest and candid with you, because sometimes people will tell you a story and they won't tell you the whole story. And they'll ask you to intervene on their behalf. Caroline was really mean to me. She said this, will you go talk to her? And then I go talk to her, and I find out there's a lot more to the story. So really it's just candor and honesty and openness to a candid dialogue.
It's a great theme running throughout this. I think that's a solid foundation of any relationship. And Michael, how did you bring that forward when you, as you said, you saw John throughout many of these events, and just his demeanor, your interactions made you feel like he was a candid and honest person. How did you bring that forward with your relationship, and what were your expectations as a kind of informal mentee?
Yeah, I think, as I got to know John, it just started as he was somebody I kind of liked being around. I had fun conversations with out at ACI events. When we were together in smaller groups, enjoyed the conversation. So I think that's something that can't be overlooked in any mentor-mentee relationship, that it sounds basic, but you should want to be around that person and like being around that person to some extent, because it allows that honesty to kind of foster both ways. If you don't like somebody, you're not going to be as likely to be honest with them. And I agree with everything everybody else has said. That honesty, I think, is the core component, and it goes both ways. As a mentee, I want the mentor to be willing to give that feedback, good or bad, and I want that to be very candid so that I can improve, because that's what I think we're all trying to do. I think some other just general expectations. I think just that mentor has a desire to help. When I think about mentor-mentee relationships from the mentee perspective, it's acknowledging that you might need help with something and being willing to ask for it, which I think is, we all need to probably hear that sometimes, because it's easy to forget, but that's what it's all about. And I think if you're willing to go to somebody and ask for that help, the mentor needs to be in a position to want to help you. I knew, as I got to know John, he had invited me to a Reds game in a suite with Frost Brown Todd one time, and I knew that it was a pretty awesome opportunity for me, given the other people that were going to be there and the relatively small group, and the opportunity to spend several hours in that room with people that I wanted to get to know, that were very successful in the industry and that kind of thing. So that told me that John thought highly enough to include me, but also that he wanted to see me succeed and do well and was willing to help me out. So when I had other things come up down the road where I needed that help, I knew he was somebody that I could kind of count on, that would be interested in my career path and providing a helping hand. So I think you kind of pick those things up. If it's a more formal relationship, even at the beginning, you're feeling each other out. But I think the relationships that succeed are because you like the person, you're able to develop that honest relationship, and both sides know that there's that willingness to kind of help out.
Wonderful. I think that's a very important aspect of it. You can't get as much help from someone who's not interested in being there to support you. So I think that's a very valid point, very solid point. And you talked about clarity and honesty and accountability have really come up. And Lizzie, this is kind of you and to Matt on your journey of teaching, mentoring people, and transitioning from being a mentor to a mentee. How would you say is the line between progressing beyond not just needing help at every stage, but then once you are solid in it, mentoring someone else, but also being open to, okay, I'm mentoring you, but I don't know how I don't know everything. There's no manual for it. And if you make a mistake, it's not that you take accountability for it. It's not that you haven't been, trained well. It's that you're human and you make a mistake. So how do you balance that whole progression of development within yourself and with the people you're mentoring?
That's a very good question. I do think it takes a level of self-awareness. So I am under no impression that I am perfect at what I do. I have no impression that I'm fully developed in certain, aspects of design or whatever. I still very frequently message Matt and ask him a question, or message someone else in the office and ask him a question about a topic. But I think at some point in time, you need to reflect and say, all right, I've done this a few times. I should be able to do this and have some sort of confidence. And I don't think that's conceited confidence, but I think it's having confidence in knowing that what you're doing is correct, but also knowing, I have been trained in these various things, and I can still turn to Matt and ask him questions if I need to. But just knowing, I know what I'm doing. I can go forward and train someone else, but I have all these people around me that I can ask for help if I need to.
I totally agree with that. I think as a mentor, the two first challenges that you'll have is first the amount of time it takes. It takes a lot of time to mentor someone, and the second challenge I would say is exactly that: is recognizing where you're strong at something and where you're better off directing your mentee to someone else that may know a more appropriate answer. And that's mainly the goal of here at Schaefer, is that a mentor is here to coach a mentee along, but is also there to introduce the mentee to key partners and people that are willing to further some of the questions that a mentee might have.
And as you mentioned, it is a significant amount of time commitment for both the mentor and the mentee. So what would drive a mentor to like offer that time to a mentee? What do you think are the main reasons and the main benefits to becoming a mentor?
I think that it's a personal choice. Here at Schaefer, I think people speak up on their own when they're ready to become a mentor. We have about, I would say, 2 mentors on every team. It's just an estimation, but I think there's great benefits, to becoming a mentor. You learn a lot more about interpersonal skills, such as listening to someone, putting yourself in someone else's shoes, as well as obviously teaching. And from a business standpoint, I think it's also extremely beneficial for a mentor to revisit some of the concepts that you may have taken for granted. And also, confront your own belief, with someone else's, and really either justify your assumptions or your method, or get introduced to additional perspectives or ways to detail and so on and so forth. It really opens you up to both personal growth as well as professional growth.
It's kind of like Daryl said, take the best of all the perspectives that you can open yourself up to. And Daryl, along those lines, when you started your journey as a mentee, you wanted to continue to view other people's ideas and perspectives and grow and develop in that way. And that's kind of, I would think, led you to becoming a mentor, so you can continue on and pass that along. But what suggestions would you have to other people who would be interested in becoming a mentor through that journey? What was your journey? How would you suggest they develop into that role?
Well, like I said the other day, you have to, not only does the mentee have to want it, but the mentor has to want it as well. And me being thankful for all the years, being blessed that I had mentors. We all have just a short period of time on this earth. So I want to give back to the industry as those before me gave to me. So it's a feeling of wanting to be part of making somebody else better, or at least giving them the tools they need to be better.
Wonderful. And when we had first met, you mentioned or I actually asked, how is it to balance teaching someone to do a job well and not teach yourself out of your own position? I thought you had a very good thought process on that.
Well, from the beginning, when Valley started, it was a very, very, very small company. But we realized right away we had something very special. So the only way to grow was to teach somebody to do your job. And you can't be afraid to teach somebody to do your job, but you're not really losing your job. That person is taking your job, but it allows you to go on and grow to the next position. And that's, when I looked down when I first started, there was nobody below me. But very quickly the company grew, and I think there was a lot of like-minded people that were not afraid to teach people to take their job for the good of the growth of the company.
Wonderful. And Niani, as you have pursued your own growth and development within the company, how do you approach like the depth of your being guided? How do you know when to balance, kind of like what I mentioned to Lizzie, balance what you've learned and when to ask questions? How do you balance those two?
It's kind of hard to say. So you said from what I know and what I want to learn, or I want to ask questions.
Exactly.
So that's where I sit and take, I evaluate myself and I ask myself questions. And like if I'm doing something and Daryl's taught me how to do something, then I keep practicing and I keep practicing. Sometimes it takes a little time. And then, sometimes you got to make mistakes, but, sometimes it's okay to ask the question. There's nothing wrong. Asking no question is the worst type of, I guess, way to go about something. So I've taught myself to just do that. But really, I can't really say how I really balance it, but it's more so of like just self-evaluation and taking time to, going through the process. Okay, like this is how I've been shown to do it. Let me go through the steps. And then if I, come across a different question that I may have, haven't gotten an answer to, or I realize something, then I ask that as a question, or I say, hey, Daryl, I realized this. Why is this? Or, something else. So that's how I really do it. I don't think for me, it's not really like a balance kind of, sort of. It's just like a process. And then then I proceed to ask the question after that. So that makes sense.
Right. No, I think that most people don't necessarily deliberate on the time or the balance. Oh, I've asked so many questions, I can't ask anymore. I think that that's too rigid of a thought process. So I like that you're fluid about it and you're really considering every situation in its own, in the sanctity of itself. Along with that.
One thing I'll add.
Yeah, go ahead, Daryl.
Niani's very good at knowing when Daryl's not in a good mood to ask questions, and she'll put the questions off for a little while. I try not to stay in a bad mood very often, but she's pretty good at that too. Or, when you're super busy, she knows the balance to say, maybe it's better to ask that question a little later on.
Wonderful. And you strike me as very observant, and I'm sure that helps you in your process of identifying Daryl as a positive mentor potential. So I'm glad that has been a benefit to you. And I think that that's something we can all work on, observing and listening and being present and aware of everything going on. Excuse me. So John, I was going to talk to you about kind of along the lines of candid and honesty and being observant. What would you say the challenges are in outside of those in developing a relationship with a mentor or with a mentee, or both? I'm sure you've had mentors that you've learned from.
Yeah. There's a fine line between mentoring and having a protege and training. If we didn't say this expressly, I'll say it now. So there are various types of relationships where mentoring relationships where you work together, like Daryl and Niani. And there are other mentoring relationships that are more organic, like Michael and I, we don't work together. And I have mentored people in my organization and trained people in my organization and outside my organization. And there's another one I do through the Ohio Supreme Court, which is completely random, where you just get assigned with someone you've never met in your life. But really, what I'm saying is, I'm sure everyone will realize there's a lot of blurring in the mentoring and the training. My biggest problem when I mentor someone, and this falls under training as well, is when they're not accountable. I'll ask someone to do something and say, when can you get it done? So they create the deadline, and then they don't meet their deadline. And then they make your life more difficult, which will put you in a very bad mood. As Daryl said, here's an example. I asked someone to give me some work product on December 15th, and they give it to me on December 23rd. Well, people have plans, myself and clients included. So it's really someone who, and as Michael said, it's someone you sort of click with. It doesn't have to be formal necessarily. I wanted to say too earlier, so different types of arrangements. Sometimes some organizations, if there is a formal mentoring program, you'll be assigned a mentor. And I've been a mentee in all these relationships or in all these organizations. And sometimes, like at our organization, we let the mentee pick their mentor. So they get to pick, and then you can accept or decline. And I don't think I've ever declined, but if I would, it would be because of time, because it is very time consuming. But the people who have mentored me, I've probably had 20 so far in my life, and I have probably 3 today, and I'm almost 60 years old. Going back to the 1980s, before I was a lawyer, and I worked at the distribution center. I was the third foreman, basically in charge of all the shipping, all the trucks loaded out the door. My mentor and boss would come in the morning and say, "Hey, how's it going?" And on one occasion, I said, "It's going horribly. 3 people called in sick. We're 4 hours behind schedule. It's just been a horrible day." His mentoring advice to me was, when I ask you how's it going, you say, "Awesome." You say it's fantastic. I don't care if the place is burning down. You make it awesome, and you make it fantastic, which I found to be very good advice. This is like very old school. This was, this guy was probably 70 in 1985. And the modern mentors are not quite as harsh. When I started as a lawyer in the 90s, my mentor was sort of an old school guy as well. He handed me a file and said, "Read this and then come back and I'll tell you what to do." So about 15 minutes later, I went and knocked on his door, and he said, "Why are you here?" And I said, "Well, you said to read it and you tell me what to do." So I read it, and he challenged me, because there's no way you read that file in 15 minutes. How could you make that your top priority and read it in 15 minutes? Well, the answer was I wanted to impress him, and I did read it in 15 minutes, and then he quizzed me on the file. So there are different types of mentoring relationships, and I try to be honest and like I said, take my lumps, because frequently, you take a lot of lumps. And my mentors today, a lot of it's, how would you say, like office politics or, politics in the industry or something like that. You're like, I will ask my mentor, I want to take this action, or I want to ask this question, what's the right way to do that? Because I know my personal weakness is I can be too candid, too blunt, and hurt your feelings sometimes. So I don't always have that tact, and a lot of the mentoring to me is how to say things in a tactful manner. And then I think Daryl said earlier, a large part of mentoring, and as the mentee, you need to understand this, you need to know what you don't know. And more than 50% of the time, when people come to me with a question, I don't know the answer, but I know who knows the answer. And I can introduce you to that person, or I can ask that person for you, or put you in touch with that person. So that's kind of how the relationship works for me, and how I think it should work. And by the way, I want to say this, and indulge me for just another second, Caroline. One of the reasons I like being a mentor is I view it as my mentees as my legacy, so to speak, without getting cheesy. It makes me very proud to see my mentees do positive things and be successful. I think I told Michael this story at Frost Brown Todd. I've been the formal mentor of the year twice. You get a plaque and everything and things on the wall. And both of those people who nominated me for that award, who were my mentees, are gone. They left the firm. they went on to greener pastures. And so Michael said, geez, is that good? That your mentees left? And I said, yeah, I think it is good, because I encouraged them to go. They were great opportunities for them. Of course, I missed them and I would have preferred they stayed, but I recognized it was in their best interest that they should take those jobs and accept the opportunity. And so they did. And of course, they were concerned I would be mad at them or something like that. But part of the mentoring as the mentor is you have to give advice what's in the best interest of the person. By the way, that's a theme of life. People, they want to hear what's in their best interest, or you'll realize people only call you when they want something from you. As a mentor, you have to be selfless and give the best advice to that person, whether it's in their best interest. And it could be not in your best interest, like, yes, you should quit and go work somewhere else. All right. Thank you for indulging me, Caroline.
No, I think that's wonderful. You must be very proud of Michael. He's very tactful, and he's been a mentor to me through this process of learning how to moderate. He moderated our first panel, and he's taken the time to help me through some of the jitters through it. So Michael, I wanted to talk to you about how tactful you are. You've identified John as a mentor, but and you as a mentee, but I know you've taken on me as a mentee. I know you might not have identified that. I'm doing it now. So what about your journey with that, and how do you feel as a legacy for John, and how do you feel like as being an informal mentor to me?
Well, first of all, John's the mentor of the year 2 times, so it was an easy choice to make. No, I think it all comes back to, whether, mentoring you, Caroline. I didn't think of it that way. I just wanted to help you. I knew it was your first time doing this. I learned some things in doing it 2 weeks ago that I thought, hey, it would have been nice if someone would have told me these things before. So I'm going to tell Caroline. And that's really all it was. But I think a lot of times that's how these things get started. When it comes to John and I, it's, what makes us kind of unique in this group, and something that's probably worth highlighting, is within the scope of ACI, John and I are vendors. John mentioned this in one of our prep calls, but we're not, out on job sites every single day performing the work. John's an attorney. I'm a financial advisor that, work with people in the construction industry, certainly, but we're both vendors. So when we go to these events, we're going in a little bit of a different capacity than maybe a lot of the other people are. And so I looked at John as somebody that's, like he said, he started showing up a long time ago. Now he's on the board. Now he's very involved in ACI in many different capacities. And I look at that as being something I want to aspire to be involved, to, not only help my career, but obviously to support the industry as a whole. And so John's had some success doing that, and it's something that I want to mimic and learn from. And I'm always learning from him. He mentioned it again today, and he said it before, but just showing up, it's a good message to receive. And so I think you're always kind of looking to your mentors to lead by example, and John does a nice job of that. And that's something that I think we can all take away, not only from people that are designated mentors to us, but really everybody that's in a position that we might want to be in someday.
And I know we had mentioned before the idea of the line between personal and professional mentoring. And since you all are not in the same company, it was less formal. What do you think about that line between personal and professional when it comes to mentor-mentee relationships?
I think in a lot of ways that line doesn't and shouldn't exist. I think if the relationship is working the way it's supposed to, and there's that honesty component to it, that those things go hand in hand. It doesn't mean that I'm going to necessarily go to John if I have some personal issue that I want help with. I might have another mentor, someone else that I go to for that, that's, maybe a friend or whatever. But I think it's important that, John understands my personal life to some extent, and I his, so that we just get to know each other better and help that relationship work in the way it's supposed to. I also think it's important to recognize that, you know, you hear a lot about like work-life balance and stuff, and I think that term implies that there is a difference between your professional life and your personal life, when I really think it's more of a blend. You know, you can't have a successful professional life if your personal life is a complete train wreck. And if, you know, you're doing miserable or hate your job and professionally your life sucks, you're not going to be as happy in your personal life. So I think those things dovetail together. And for a mentor-mentee relationship to work, that there has to be an understanding of kind of the whole person, even if the specific topics that you might go to for help on or that you're discussing might be fall in one camp versus the other. I do think there's always got to be some overlap there.
Right. To John's point about the mentees that left, perhaps they left because the location of the new opportunity is closer to their family and they want to be able to have their family around to help with their young ones or any other reason. So I think that the balance, and exactly, kind of balance implies there's some equity between both of them. That you spend a little bit more time in one than the other, but the idea is that you can enjoy what you do in all aspects. Well, not all aspects, but across the board. So more days are good than bad. So I think that's a good balancing aspect of it. And each job takes a different personality. That's one of the things that I've learned as I've been mentored and progressed in my professional career. Every position emphasizes a different disposition. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a really good process through the mentor-mentee relationship. You can see how it's everyone's disposition lends themselves to the job. John, you had something to say?
I just wanted to say back, I agree with Michael 100%. And you really need, because of understanding the whole work-life balance, you really need to know your mentees' personal life a little bit. I mean, you don't need to have dinner with their spouse or anything on a regular basis, but you need to know sort of where they're coming from. Back in the old days, it was, I don't care what's going on when you're not here. That's your problem. You better get your ass in here and do the job. That's not how it works now. Thank goodness for all of us. And you need to know if someone, I've worked with people who's, they lost a baby. They have a child or going through a divorce, or you know, they're a single parent and you know they have two small children, or you know, I mean, there are just things that can impact your work, or at least you know you need to be more flexible in your work, and you need to be aware of that and empathetic to that. And as a parent of a couple children myself, you know, I can offer advice on some of that. Well, you know, here's what I would do, or here's how you accomplish that, or, but it can be quite challenging. And you really need to understand where the person's coming from. It kind of goes to the whole candor thing. You know, I need to know the full picture to give you good advice. So I do think it's very important. And again, you don't have to necessarily be best friends with their children or their spouse or anything, but it is important to know their perspective and where they're coming from and how to balance that work-life situation. Or even if it's as simple as, you know, we're taking our family vacation. Do I have to give this to you next Wednesday because I really would rather be on my family vacation? And they, well, no, that can wait, you know, until you get back.
Right. And I think that's a wonderful aspect of it, being flexible and respectful of other people's time, in the sense that family is important to them. And that's wonderful that you can take that into account. And in a way, children are the legacy of some people, and in a way, mentees after they've moved on or even in the process are the legacy of others. So Lizzie and Matt, I know that Lizzie is about, you know, in the process of being Matt's legacy and going to carry that on and continue forward. In that sense, how do you know when it's time to move on from that mentor-mentee relationship and maybe become more partners, or just, I wouldn't necessarily say there's a gap, but if you were to say come closer together on being less mentor-mentee and more colleagues. So how do you know when that transition time is happening or has arrived, and how would you go through that process?
I think it's a very blurry line. I don't think you necessarily realize it's happening. I think at Schaefer, because we start so formally, and we start with orientation and go through a whole week's process of introducing someone to the company, and then aligning schedules in order to try to work together on similar projects. Use any mistake as a learning opportunity, and building on that. Eventually, that just transitions naturally to a more of a colleague type of relationship. And I don't necessarily know if there's a particular point in this relationship where you decide, that Lizzie doesn't need me anymore, or I think as a company, we try to transition people out of mentorship when their work balance seems to have taken place, and which we estimate about a year. But when I started at Schaefer, I actually had two wonderful mentors, and I worked with one for about a year, which is Marshall Carmen, and then I transitioned to being mentored by Bob Schinkel, who has since then retired from Schaefer. And those two relationships are very stark contrasts. And I think that by the time I started being mentored by Bob Schinkel himself, I think he realized that the need for his mentorship was maybe not as extensive as he had assumed, and that transition, I think, happened sometime between that first year and second year, at least in my mind. But I think it's extremely blurry. I don't think, just like personal and professional parallels, I think that if Lizzie were to come to me with personal question, I would approach it the same way as I do a professional question. It's simply that I want to build a good colleague to colleague relationship, just like with anybody else that I work with.
Yeah, well, I've never thought of myself as Matt's legacy, but I kind of like that. So I might start using that term. But I do think that it is kind of a blurry line there. But I do think that there's like some very tangible things that we have that can kind of lend itself to when the relationship might be like formally over per se. From a very technical side of things, if I've asked Matt how to do something before, like I should probably know how to do it again, or I should know where to go to figure out how to do it, or who to ask. So at some point in time, those questions don't necessarily run out, but they slow down, and that's a good indicator. I also think we have, at Schaefer, we have check-ins with our team leader every 2 weeks, and I think that's a moment that you pause and you reflect on, what's happened over the past 2 weeks, what is going well, how are you progressing as an engineer? And I think those are just times where you can think like, all right, I am making progress, because otherwise it is kind of hard to tell in the day-to-day life and steady stream of work how you're progressing. But I do think having Matt as my mentor, who's gone through the same process that I have, starting from designing very simple things to designing an entire building or helping to manage a project. I think him mentoring me and having gone through that process, he understands the feeling and knows what it feels like to gradually build up different responsibilities. So similar to Michael and John, where John obviously has a lot of very valuable life experience, he can look back and he can help Michael as he navigates different things in life.
Yeah, and I would add to that too, that one of the reasons I became a mentor was because when I started, I was relying on a lot of different people at the company, and I felt like this transition, had its bumps in the road, but overall was a fairly smooth transition. And I wanted to reciprocate that to someone else. I coming out of school, I did not know half of what I know now, and it's foolish to think that out of school you will know enough to do your job. And I think that part of this mentoring process is really to give back and really teach someone a smoother way of doing things, essentially.
Make that transition a little bit less intimidating.
Right. Yeah, and it's equally that way for someone that is starting at a company that has prior experience. I think getting introduced to the culture is just as important, even if you already have the technical background. Getting introduced to the company by someone that has been there a certain amount of time is a lot smoother process and helps with employee retention, satisfaction, and all of these great things that we introduced in the first session.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned reciprocating for the mentorship that you've received. And Daryl, I know you talked about that and passing it along, passing on the best pieces of everyone. So how would you say that ties into identifying someone who needs a mentor? Because I don't know, would you have self-identified as a mentor before Niani approached you? Or have you gone through and identified people and thought, I would like to be their mentor, or they could use a mentor? Has that been a process of how you've gone through this development into becoming a mentor for Niani?
I think it's a combination of, I think she saw my gray hair and figured that old guy should probably know something. So that was probably part of it. And I think the other part, it goes back to that wanted thing. You see those out there that that want to grow, that want to improve yourself. And as John said earlier, I mean, it is a huge time constraint, but it's a rewarding process as long as the mentee wants to grow, wants to learn, wants to be better at what they do. I see this professional and personal mentoring topic. I might be going backwards here, but I almost see that as two buckets. You have professional, what it takes to become a project manager or whatever position the mentee is shooting for. And then there's personal things in the professional side, like how to deal with difficult folks, things like that. And then you have the personal part about what goes on outside the building. And I think this is where the topic comes back that, and Michael kind of touched on it, I think you should have more than one, because one mentor doesn't have all the answers. So, I strongly encourage through this whole process that you continue to gain more, and maybe you just call it relationships. It's not, maybe it's not a mentor, but maybe it's not official, but there's a whole lot of people in this business that you can learn from, or in any business that you can learn from. So don't pigeonhole yourself into, I'm only going to talk to Daryl.
Absolutely. I love that. And Niani, along those lines, what advice would you have for someone looking for a mentor? You kind of kept your eyes open and thought, I want to continue to grow professionally. How did you go through that process, and what advice would you have for someone looking to develop a mentor?
So I think it just comes with the person within themselves, like a person that knows they want to grow, they know they want to expand, they know they want to be better. It starts with, I think, self-evaluation first, and then knowing what you want and what you plan to get out of it. Um, and then you proceed to say, okay, you look around and see who's around you that is open to teaching you and to want to help you grow. Like Daryl and I, our offices are right next to each other. So like it was kind of like I said, like it was kind of like a flow type of thing. Like I always ask them questions and I always pop my head in to say hello. And I listened to his conversations and I figured out like, hey, this is a person that I work with that, you know, I would like to teach me how he does things. And there's other people in the office for different things that I go to as well. And what's the other question? I lost the second
And
part.
advice for people who are trying to go through that process as well.
So the advice I would give is basically just to be open and able to listen and wanting to be able to learn. Like you have, like Daryl said, you have to want it. There's no other way. You can't help a person that doesn't want to be helped, and you just have to be able to listen and be able to take constructive criticism, and that's really what I can say. Like, and then it all flows from there. But if you don't want it, then there's nothing else that you can do. There's nothing that nobody else can do to help you. So
Right, absolutely. And Daryl, I know we had mentioned this before, and when we first met, but Gianni put a lot of effort into the idea of approaching you, and that takes the courage of the first step. But as John had mentioned before, the difficulties of rejecting someone who asks to be your mentee and how to preserve that relationship, not both professionally and personally. You might respect them, you might think they have wonderful potential, but if your obligations are a little too strong, what would they be? And Yanni, just think about this. I'm going to bounce it back to you once Daryl answers about how you would handle that. I know that that's not what happened in this case, but you have a lot of insight and a lot of nuance, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on that once we get some from Daryl.
So again, if the person comes to you and shows enthusiasm, and you know, we talked previously about the time. I think the commitment is to make the company better, to make the industry better. If somebody truly shows that enthusiasm and wanting to learn, you'd be hard pressed to turn them away. Now, there has been situations over the years with other mentees that you may find out, you know, a little bit into it that maybe you're not the best fit, but then I think you owe them to help them find someone else that is a better fit, you know. But yeah, it's like I say, it's giving back. It's legacy, as John says, not only personally, but you know, for the company, to help people grow, help people be better, and like I said, of all the people that did it for us, I don't know how you say no.
That's a very valid statement. I can understand that difficulty. Niani, had that been presented to you as a negative, unfortunately, their time was stretched a little too thin. How would you have balanced that? Would you have had a backup or what would be your process in the event of a rejection?
So,
and sorry, one second, Niani, I'm so sorry. I wanted to give everyone else in the audience a question as well. If anyone has any questions or thoughts that they want to throw in, please add to the chat. I know that we're monitoring it, so please jump in if you have any questions. Sorry, go ahead, Niani.
No, you're fine. So I'm like really quiet and like bashful, really. So I don't know what I would have done initially. I probably would have been a little sad, but I know it would have led to me asking a question, maybe to that person in specific. Maybe like, is there a reason why, you know, and what things can I do to be more, I guess, if that is the case, if there was a reason why besides time constraints. I would just ask what steps do I need to do to be more, I guess, teachable, or what things do I need to work on? I really don't know. That's like hard. And I don't really want to say I've never been rejected, but I guess like with the type of person you are, that's what makes it harder for a person to tell you no, they don't want, or they can't be your mentor. So yeah.
No, I completely agree. And that's never an easy conversation, but it's not an easy conversation to ask to be a mentor either. I think the whole initial conversations can be a little delicate. So due to the potential volatility of being a mentor, I know that we've talked about from Matt that you get other perspectives and you can stay up to date on what other people might be learning and things that you might have thought you understood in one way, but you can see another way to do it. What would be some other reasons that it would be good that you would pursue being a mentor? And I'm actually going to throw this to Lizzie, who's becoming a mentor, and then to the other mentees, and then we'll circle back to the mentors. But having been a mentee, what would you think you would benefit from by becoming a mentor? And I know, Lizzie, you're about to start this process, so I'm picking on you for that.
I'll let you go first.
All right.
I think that the benefits, of being a mentor are, as I said, personal and professional growth. But I think it's really part of giving back as well to the professional, as well as the future generation. It has a lot to do with role transition and transition of ownership and responsibilities. Essentially, it makes me extremely happy to see Lizzie being in a position to becoming a project manager as well as a mentor now.
For me, sorry.
No, go ahead. I was going to give you another minute to think about it, because I know I kind of threw that at you. Do you want another minute? Because I can kick it over to Michael, because he's already taken on the role of mentoring me. But go ahead if you. I don't want to put you out.
No, you're fine. You're fine. I was just going to say, for me, I think there will be an additional challenge being a mentor, and I think it's good to be challenged in your job. I think I'm very much expecting day one for my new mentee to ask me a question, and I'm going to say, gosh, I have no idea. But I think that's part of the point. I'll know where to go to find the answer, and then we'll both, learn in the process. I think it's important to be challenged, and I don't just want to feel comfortable. I want to continue to grow. And I also think just it adds a level of interest to my job. Maybe that's a little bit too, I don't know, laid back, but I think it's good to add something else to my job, whether it's rather than just doing, purely technical work or talking to clients. I think it will be something new and exciting.
Wonderful. It's a great way to view it. I think that's great. All right, Michael, I'm going to kick it over to you. Pardon me.
I think there's a few things that haven't already been mentioned, because those are all great answers. But I think one, anytime you're in a new relationship, you're kind of expanding your network, and it's an opportunity to get to know somebody better and on a more personal and close level, which, I think is just good in general. I think, you hear the saying, it's not what you know, it's who you know. So if you have an opportunity to get to know somebody through that type of mentor-mentee relationship, or by helping somebody out, then there's certainly a benefit to you there. I also think it's an opportunity, especially for someone in like Lizzie's situation or my situation, where we're used to being the mentee, and to get an opportunity to kind of mentor somebody younger or coming up behind us. It's kind of some initial exposure to management of somebody else. It teaches you to give feedback instead of just receive it, because as we're new into organizations and we're younger, we're more used to receiving feedback. And we've talked a lot about how important it is to be able to listen and be coachable and that kind of thing. But giving feedback is an important skill too, I think, to be able to develop. So I think by taking advantage of those kind of situations, it's an opportunity to sort of practice that and learn that, which can certainly be a benefit. So yeah, I think I think for any of these relationships to go well, they need to go both ways. I try any chance I get to help John, and I think he knows if he ever needed anything from me, or if I could do anything for him, he knows he can ask. So even though he's kind of someone that I'm looking up to, or that's in that mentor role, I think it's important that it always goes both ways. And I think everyone else on the panels would agree with that. So I think when it's working right, it's a mutually beneficial relationship, and both parties are always learning and getting something out of it.
I agree. And along with that, it's a reciprocal relationship, as you mentioned. And we had a question that came in. I'm going to actually aim this one at Daryl and Yanni and Matt and Lizzie, because they have a more structured mentee-mentor relationship within the company. And the question was if you recommend a structured outside work activities for mentor-mentee relationships. So structured things, I'm not sure exactly what they're discussing at that point, but maybe going to get a coffee with your mentor mentee outside of work, or possibly bowling. I don't know. I know that some companies do cultural aspects like that to build the relationships within the company. So this is to Daryl and Yanni first on what do you think the benefits would be, or do you think it would be necessary to have a structured outside work activities with your mentor mentee relationships?
That's a tough one. So we do not, but it doesn't mean that we wouldn't, or we may stop and, like you said, get a cup of coffee. But I mean, we're more focused on the professional growth side, I think, of the relationship is what I feel. But you know, we've became friends by doing that, just with the other interactions we've had. So I don't know that there would be benefit to that. I mean, I know if there's an activity, I know Yanni's been with all the several of the others in the office going out to some ACI events. She got to put shaving cream all over Todd Bluss there that one time. So I know that was pretty exciting. So yes, a personal thing, I guess it would be a preference among the two mentor mentees.
Yeah, I was getting ready to say, but if we wanted to, then of course that we would talk about it. But I think we're so always focused on working in the professional part of it that, you know, for me personally, I'm always trying to figure out what's the next thing that I could do to help me grow with work. So it's like, you know, just time constraints and stuff like that. So.
Right, prioritizing efficiency, which I think is wonderful. And as Daryl said, there are plenty of ACI opportunities that balance work and fun. So keep an eye out for the Say Yes to the Mess coming in August. And Matt and Lizzie, what about you all?
I think we're fortunate enough at Schiffer that we have a very robust culture team in culture events. We take great pride in the Schaefer culture, and I think that it is something I would recommend to answer the question, and it's to build something outside of the office is part of building this middle ground between people. I think that has taken a very strong toll in the last year. We've been trying to revive some of these events, but one that I have appreciated, I think, with Lizzie the most is probably volleyball. We had quite a few tournaments when Lizzie and I were first getting started, and then as well as happy hours. Shout out to the Schaefer culture team. I know a few of them are listening.
I mean, I think that Matt and I are fortunate that through our relationship as mentee and mentor, we've also become friends. I do agree with Daryl and Yanni, though, that it might be a read the room situation. You know, some mentor-mentee pairs might not, have the age similarity that Matt and I do. But I do think, having events that Schaefer does, like through the culture team, like happy hours, or having events that ACI does, that could be a really great opportunity for you to go and say like, hey, mentor, would you like to go to this event with me? And then you could do some more networking, and they might know some other individuals there. Or you could go yourself and meet some other people that can be your mentors, whether that's formally or informally. So I don't necessarily think, you have to have dinner once a month in order to strengthen your relationship. But I do think taking advantage of outside activities, whether that's within your company or outside your company, is advantageous.
I would also add that a long car ride to a site visit is a great way to get that started.
I agree. So we're closing in our final moments, and we've had a question from the group that's kind of like one of the last questions that we have. So to everyone, what is the best advice you've ever received, either from a mentor or a mentee? And then I'm going to direct the main, kind of the more targeted question to Michael, because I know he can answer this one. As a mentee, can you identify a single thing that you've learned from your mentor that has stuck with you and that you revert back to often?
Yeah, thanks, Caroline. I think something I learned from John, I don't know if he knew he was teaching it to me or not, but he highlighted it very well back at one of our breakfast with the board events, just the importance of being prepared for whatever it is you're doing. You know, I know John was, I think, on the board, one of the board members we were kind of interviewing, and it was very clear that he took some time in advance to think about the questions and had really good answers ready to go. It made the whole event better. Everyone got more from it. And it just kind of clicked with me that no matter what it is that you're doing, you know, if it's your main day-to-day job, or if it's an event like that, or if you're going to a networking event, just the importance of being prepared. You know, I've gotten in the habit, well, not over the last year, but I've gotten into the habit when there were networking events with ACI of looking at the registration list in advance to just see who is signed up and might be there, and preparing myself for, oh, I haven't seen that person in a while. I'd love to, you know, seek them out and say hi, or here's two people that I've been trying to meet for a long time and I haven't. So maybe now's a good opportunity. But then also in your day-to-day, whether it's preparing for a client meeting and making sure that you've got your notes in place and everything, or preparing for an internal meeting, just this idea of always being prepared for whatever it is you're doing, I think is really important. It's something that John helped highlight to me several years ago now that's definitely stuck with me on a daily basis.
Wonderful. That's absolutely, fortune favors the prepared, I think, is the catchphrase. Yeah. And John, I know you had mentioned that the concept of mentoring and the way it's developed and the way we view it nowadays is actually relatively new. It used to be kind of a throw them in and sink or swim. So how is that kind of developed, and how has that played into your advice? Because I don't know if you have mentorship advice that would have been as advantageous as maybe advice that you might have got from a mentee.
Sure. Here's my very long answer. First of all, lack of preparation is a surefire way to embarrass yourself. And I don't like being embarrassed. So, I mean, I get really, really embarrassed and upset with myself when I'm not prepared. So my mentoring advice to you all is always be prepared. I wanted to make this point too. I'm going back a little bit, Caroline, excuse me. You know, when the question was, you know, why would you want to be a mentor? Everyone on this call should think about that, because most of you at some point in your life will probably be a mentor to someone, and you might not even know it. It might be very formal. It might be very informal. It might be a coworker. And by the way, anyone who regularly comes to you and asks you questions is probably your mentee, because they care what you have to say. And it might be a coworker. It might be someone you went to high school with who admires your success. So you should all think about that. Another thing I wanted to throw in, going back, one way I definitely know when someone needs a good mentoring relationship is when they're not performing at his or her highest level. You know, they could do better and they're floundering, and you know they're a hard worker, you know they're a smart person. They just need good advice on how to get there. That's definitely how you know when someone needs mentoring. Yeah, Caroline, what I was saying is formal mentoring is a fairly new concept in lawyer world. As recently as the 1990s, mentoring was kind of viewed as a waste of time. Well, why would we do that? It takes so much time. It's a waste of time, and we don't make any money doing that. You know, I can't charge clients for giving an associate advice. And as time has progressed and things have changed, like the more focus on work-life balance and hoping that people are successful in the long run, because in a lot of jobs and professions, people show up and they burn out and they leave. So part of it is, the retention of getting the person to stay in the job is to mentor them and give them good advice and help them how to achieve that work-life balance. And I want to say this too. One of the questions about the structured outside work activities, my answer to that is yes and no. My organization has very structured outside work activities with your internal mentors, and they're a good way to break the ice. But if it's someone that I would much prefer informal, 1.5 hours, something like that.
That's wonderful. I think that that's a really good concept in the sense that you can have all of those aspects of the mentor-mentee relationship and the progression flow through, and you get to, as Daryl said, pluck the best cherries from the mosaic. We are closing in on it, so I want to make sure I kick it back to Erica, but any little snippets of advice from Matt, Lizzie, Daryl, Niani, best one little sentence? Okay, I have one. The statement of present a solution, not a problem. And one of the things that we've discussed on is how to juggle when it's appropriate to ask a question, because sometimes you can't always present a solution as a mentee, but on those moments that you can, it's always good to, as John said, even if the world is burning down, if you could present a solution, everything's fine. So on those rare occasions that you can do that, make sure that you've examined every aspect and done so. So I'm going to pass it back to Erica so we can have our closing remarks.
Hey Caroline, I'm gonna jump in real quick before Erica, because I think it's worth mentioning for everyone on the call that obviously we're putting together a somewhat formal mentor program here with ACI. So I think it's important to take advantage of the resources that are available to you, whether it's inside your own organization or outside, like something like what we're doing here. You've heard everyone say that having multiple mentors is a good thing. So I would encourage everybody listening, whether they're interested in finding a mentor or finding someone to help out as a mentor and finding a mentee to participate in this program that we're starting, because it doesn't work if we don't have a lot of people excited about it. I think we do, because given the number of people that are tuning into this panel discussion and the one a couple weeks ago, but it's an awesome opportunity to be paired up with someone that's like-minded within the industry, for people to help each other out. So I don't think we should ever be afraid to take advantage of the stuff that's available to us. You don't necessarily need to always go out looking for a mentor. There are things available to you to take advantage of, and there are probably, if you just stop and think about the people that you go to for help, or that, like John said, ask you a lot of questions, you probably have a lot of these relationships already, whether you realize it or not. So just wanted to kind of get that out there before we close, that I hope everyone will participate in what we're doing.
Absolutely. I love that. And as you mentioned, everyone here, as you can see, everyone here is very approachable, very nice. And if they've signed up to be a mentor, they want to help you. They want to devote time to you and your growth. And you can get a lot of different perspectives and wonderful ways wonderful opportunities that way. All right, Erica, thank you so much, everyone, for your time. Erica, your closing comments?
All right, well, I just want to start with Caroline. You did a wonderful job. Again, kudos to Caroline. This is her first time. Very proud of you. You did great. And to Niani and Daryl, Michael and John and Lizzie and Matt, thank you guys so much for sharing your expertise, your advice, and more about just your guys' relationships. I know I personally have, been a mentor and a mentee. Yes, mentor and mentee in my life. And I always look forward to those relationships. And we're really excited about the next step. Michael did allude to it. We do have one more session for phase 1 of the rollout of our mentoring program. And that is 2 weeks from today. And you'll hear from Jordan Vogel, who is our executive director at ACI, just more about just a recap of what we've been talking about, his position and how excited he is that ACI is doing this. The board has been very supportive of this as well. And we will actually have, it's going to be interactive. So we'll have small groups. I'm going to toss some names in a hat and just kind of throw people in different groups and really have you guys start interacting and talking. You never know, maybe a good relationship will come out of that. If not, we'll be officially launching the next phase, quote unquote, of the mentoring program where we will have applications to fill out. We'll start pairing people up. It may not be the first pair, may not be the second pair, but we'll get you guys in connection with each other to either mentor or mentee or both. You never know. And we will also have some speed networking opportunities as the CDC and the state and everything starts opening back up. We're going to be getting in person here pretty soon as well. So maybe some just light networking events, whatever. But we're very, very excited. Again, thank you to our panelists. Thank you all for showing up today. John said it perfectly. You got to show up. You got to do the work. And as we all have said it, you have to want it. So go get it. But thank you guys so much for your time today. Congratulations to the young professionals for, again, putting this together and kicking this off. I'm a proud mama when it comes to these YPs. You guys are awesome. We've been a group now for 8 years, and I'm just very proud of everyone. So thank you guys, and we will see you in 2 weeks for small group interaction and discussion. Have a good day.